Bridging the Gap, European Commitment for the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in Development Cooperation. What is Bridging the Gap? Bridging the Gap, BTG, is the flagship initiative of the European Union for the inclusion of persons with disabilities in development cooperation. The project aims at increasing the inclusion of persons with disabilities at both the international and country level through more inclusive and accessible public policies and services. The initiative rests on two mutually reinforcing parts. Bridging the Gap 1. The first component works at the global level and aims to develop tools to promote the rights, participation, and inclusion of persons with disabilities in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, in line with the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD. This component is led by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and includes consultations with experts, United Nations agencies, civil society, and academia. Bridging the Gap 2. This second component focuses on mainstreaming disability in international cooperation and on strengthening the capacities of government and organisations of persons with disabilities in 5 partner countries: Burkina Faso, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Paraguay, and Sudan. This component focuses on inclusive education, universal access to health and employment, livelihoods and social protection, and data generation. Bridging the Gap 2 is implemented by a consortium led by the International and Ibero-American Foundation for Administration and Public Policies, and is also composed of the Spanish Agency for Development Cooperation, the Austrian Development Agency, the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation, the European Disability Forum, and the International Disability and Development Consortium. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland also contribute to the initiative. The two components began their activities in November 2016 and April 2017 respectively. Ever since, Bridging the Gap has managed to produce outputs and results which help to advance towards objectives and to set the basis for its future actions, initiatives, and collaborations. Bridging the Gap 1. Advancements were made on developing human rights indicators on the CRPD. 2 meetings were held in Geneva, Switzerland, with participants from Ethiopia, Paraguay, Moldova, Jordan, and Nepal. Following consultations, a first set of human rights indicators for roughly half of the Convention articles is being finalised, alongside the draft guidelines for policymakers concerning the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, guided by the CRPD. This work has triggered much interest by all stakeholders and confirmed a demand for such tools to facilitate the mission to leave no one behind. Bridging the Gap 2. Mainstreaming disability in development cooperation. Leveraging on CRPD Article 32's provisions, as well as on the European Consensus on Development, BTG2 has organised 5 workshops on disability mainstreaming in Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, and Paraguay, mainstreamed the disability component into existing international cooperation initiatives, worked along with the delegations of the European Union in the 5 participating countries, actively engaged in a number of international forums and events, including the Global Action on Disability Network. Strengthening public institutions in providing inclusive policies and services. The project has focused on implementing initial activities to raise awareness on the CRPD, the SDGs, and on concrete means and examples for their implementation in the partner countries. In Burkina Faso and Sudan, 4 specific training sessions on linking SDGs and CRPD have been organised. In Paraguay, a high-level technical workshop on data disaggregation and indicators took place for over 90 attendants. In Ethiopia, BTG2 has been working through the national government's Productive Safety Net programme and has organised 3 disability inclusion sensitisation trainings for government officials in the country, reinforcing the national organisations of persons with disabilities. Nothing about us without us. Bridging the Gap adheres to this principle and aims at strengthening the advocacy capacity of the organisations of persons with disabilities in the participating countries, working in particular to increase the role of women with disabilities. In Ecuador, the project has supported peer exchanges between the national organisations of persons with disabilities and their correspondent counterparts in Spain. In Sudan, vocational training sessions for women with disabilities were organised in the rural region of Jeddah. In Ethiopia, over 45 regional government staff members attended the gender-responsive workshops of BTG2. Bridging the Gap, a global initiative. Bridging the Gap is not only about country activities. Since the beginning of the implementation phase, the project has organised 4 technical workshops and 2 communication events, launched a 12-session webinar cycle on disability and development in 3 languages, established communication tools reaching out to over 800 registered subscribers. The challenges are many, but Bridging the Gap's activities so far have set a solid basis for producing concrete results and impacts for improving the socio-economic inclusion of persons with disabilities in low and middle-income countries. Keep following us, and let's advance together on the path of inclusion. This video was produced with the financial support of the European Union. Its contents are the sole responsibility of Bridging the Gap and do not necessarily reflect the views of the European Union.